Hey, welcome back to Suffocating in Suburbia. This is Stevie GB, your host, your only host. And today I have a great guest, a good friend of mine who I've known since, I want to say 2006. I'll tell you a little bit about how we met. We met at the Huntington Laugh Off, which was a contest, which I never like going to these contests, but it was fun. I spoke about this if you've been listening. The last show I did with Samantha, I told her the same story because that's how I got to know Samantha at Little Bit of Heaven from John. And it was the Huntington Laugh Off, and there was about 500 people in the audience, and I think five judges. And it was the judges pick and the audience pick. There were about 15 comics. We had like 5 minutes each. I was up second. And at the end of the night, I did not win the grand prize from the judges, but I got the audience choice prize. So I always like to say 500 people liked me and five people liked the winner. So in that case, I was the winner. But here he is, a good guy. I met him on that show, and we've been friends ever since. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only John Shea. How's that? John,
Very good, Stevie. How you doing? Good to
you
see you.
remember you remember that day?
Of course. How could I
That
forget?
was our first meeting, I believe.
Yeah, it was. I went first and you went second because they put us next to each other in these two chairs, and
That
I
was
was pretty nervous.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was only in comedy a short time at the time, so I was freaking out myself. And
Yeah.
there was like 30 comics, and Bob Nelson was the host. Uh, Excuse me. It was a very interesting night, but then I started working Samantha's, and I knew you would be perfect for Samantha's, and we got you in there. Then you and I started working a lot together after that, and then we
Yeah.
started the Clean Comedy All Stars, which we hopefully we can get back going once this
Yeah.
pandemic thing ends.
Yeah, we've done quite a few shows. We did some libraries. We did a couple of, we did that place in, what's that bar you always talk about? I forgot
Oh,
the name of it.
Carney's, and
Barney's.
yeah, that Irish, which I hopefully we'll get back to. And of course, we did Westbury. We did Westbury Music Fair. We did that show in the lounge, which was pretty
Well,
was well received. And
that
that
was a
opened up
funny
Westbury
story.
for you to play on the main stage, who you opened up for a few people, right? I mean,
Just one, Dion, just the one time.
yeah, and
Uh,
I was lucky enough to be on that stage too. Darcy
I
Novak
know.
through Richie Benevini, which we'll talk about Richie in a little while,
Mhm.
got me into that, and that was just being on that stage was a thrill.
Oh,
I mean, that was iconic, as you said.
it's the, to me, that is the venue. I mean, people talk about the Coliseum or Jones Beach, but Westbury Music Fair was always the venue because, I mean, everybody played there. I mean, Don Rickles, Joan Rivers.
Oh yeah.
Was Sinatra ever there? I don't know.
Yes, he was. Basically, what happened with Sinatra was that they booked him to do a week in June. Right before I started working there, but I had taken my mom. I think it was '93. I could be wrong with the date, but he played a week, and he was supposed to come back in October. But what happened was it was a little rough because he'd been jet lagged, so the shows were a little rough, and supposedly something happened with somebody took pictures, and they just never did the second engagement. He ended up doing taking the tickets that were sold for the October engagement, and he did one show at the Coliseum with Rickles, but he only played 1 week at Westbury. But Sinatra, Sammy, Liza Minnelli. I mean, when you think about that venue and you think about the people who've been on that stage, it's mind blowing. The Doors, Stevie, The Who,
I know.
Springsteen. I mean, have been on that stage. And actually, when it first started, if I can give a little history lesson, it was a tent. And they also do plays because you remember back in the 50s and 60s, the only really venue was around was the Jones Beach Theater when Guy Lombardo would bring in Showboat for like the
I've been
summer.
to, I saw Sound of
Yeah,
Music and
so did
Showboat.
I. Yeah, and I saw King and I. And then when the theater was made permanent, and the reason why it's in the round, if you remember in the 60s, and so there were a lot of performers that singly stood on the stage, like your Tony Bennett's, like your Engelberts, like where the band would be in the pit and they would be in the round. And it was pretty unique. And as the time developed, and people like Bobby Vinton and Frankie Valli, whoever, I mean, that's where, and then the comics that we just mentioned, that's why the round was so like such a nice venue, and the band was in the pit, and then they also had plays there too, and they would have celebrities come in and do like a week of plays, like Loretta Swit did Annie Get Her Gun, or Gary Sandy from KRP or Cincinnati, Mickey
Wow.
Rooney. They'd come and do plays, and then eventually they came up with the concept to rotate the stage so bands can play. So the whole band set up, and the stage would slowly rotate, so everybody would get a good view. And as people has always said, there's not a bad seat in that venue.
Oh, yeah.
It seats 2,800 when it's in the round. And then when we do what's called proscenium, where we put the curtain up and the performers face out, It's about 1,600 or so. And they did a lot of improvements over the years. They put up video screens and stuff, and they've improved a lot of it. But the writing on the wall now is not good.
I
From what I'm
heard.
hearing, yeah, from what I'm hearing, it's a 2,800 seat arena. But from what I'm hearing, that the Coliseum is going to become a 5,000 seat arena. This is what I'm hearing, because the Islanders are moving to Belmont, and with that and the Paramount and the space, Westbury might get pushed out. And considering where it is location wise, I'm sure the developers are dying to get in there to put up condos or something. But it would be a real shame for that stage to go away. I mean, because if you talk to anybody coming up, is comics performers, to play that stage, you felt like you really made it, because it's a union shop. So we have stage hands that move in the equipment, do the loadouts and everything. As you walk into the building, in the backstage door, there's a kitchen to the left. We had this woman, Wendy, who would cook like home cooked meals for the performers. I mean, they used to get deli platters if they go anywhere else, but they used to get roast beef and chicken and everything. I mean, we were treated like a real star. And the dressing rooms there, right? There's Star One, which is the main dressing room, where there's like a main room, a little bedroom, a bathroom, and a shower, and then Star Two. And it goes up to Star 9, and Star 9 is basically a closet. You know,
I think that's where they stuck me. I was in either 7 or 9. I was like in a little side booth. But
yeah,
hey, I
well,
was happy to be there.
yeah, because the reason why there's so many dressing rooms, because they had the plays. That's why. There was also like a band room back there too, which was like a barren room where the band could leave their instruments, where especially if there was orchestras playing. Like, you know, they could put their basses and their oboes and their, whatever they needed to put back there, you know, especially if they were doing more in one night. And when I started in 94. Actually, I came in for an LL Cool J show in the late 93, I think. And then I started in 94. And it used to be so busy there in the summertime, you would figure they would do a show Tuesday through Saturday from June until like September. No lie, like every night, 6 nights a week. And you're not talking like half sold shows. Most of the shows were sold out.
Wow.
And you'd have your Stephen Edie's come in for a week, your Kenny Rogers, you know what I mean? And this was our side, my side hustle, and most of the guys that worked there with me, this was a second job for them. But it became more than that. It became such a fun place to be, because most of the guys I worked with in security and in the stagehands are mostly Long Island blue collar backgrounds, TV, movie guys. So we all got along. We told a lot of stories. We told, what's your favorite comedy, because there was a lot of downtime. I mean, especially because as security, we can't leave till the performer leaves. And when in the instance of an Engelbert Humperdinck, he likes to stay in his dressing room by himself till like 2 a.m. listening to his CDs. But you can't knock on the door and say, Engelbert, we want to go home. We have to wait for him to leave. So there's a lot of downtime. No, that's a true story. And you just sit, and we just basically hang out at the security desk, and we just pretty much just tell stories and stuff. And my first boss was Carl Lembo, and Carl was a great guy, and he moved on to the Disney Theater. And then Leon DeMarco took over, and Jim Donahue, who got me the job, and he's one of my closest friends, one of the funniest guys you will ever meet, was Jimmy Donahue. Master impression. I always said he should do comedy, and he always tell me, John, I did it. But he was the voice of Westbury. If you ever went to Westbury, please take your seats. 9 times out of 10, that was Jim on the house mic, So, but the Jim Donahue story I tell a lot was we had Tony Bennett. Now, Tony Bennett is without a doubt one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. You call him Mr. B backstage. He's very approachable. And what's amazing about him, his sound check is he'll walk on the stage in an empty theater and just go, bop, 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 and that would be it, because his voice was like so perfect. And at the end of the show, he would do an a cappella Fly Me to the Moon without a mic, and you'd hear it. It was amazing. But on this particular show, as you know how Westbury is, there's that main aisle that the performers have to walk down to the stage. And as security, we have to line the aisle. We have to protect, because people will jump out in front of them and everything. So Tony Bennett is on stage. He's getting ready he's doing his last song. And as you know, the worst thing about Westbury is getting out of there, because there's one way in and one way out. And traffic is always a mess. It takes you an hour to get out of there. So a lot of people like to sneak out and leave early. And so Tony's getting ready. So the main aisle, there was a woman in the last row, a couple, they were in their 70s, and they start to leave. And now we're getting ready to bring Tony up, but we're going to let them go. The lady, there's a step down. The lady missed a step and fell right into the aisle, right?
Oh, no.
So I take a step to help her. Right in my ear, Donahue goes, "Down goes Frazier," right? And I lost it, Stevie. I mean, I started laughing, but everybody thought I was laughing because the lady fell over, but that wasn't the case. I just heard him in my ear, right? And then the husband follows after him and goes, "Get up! What are you doing? Get up!" Right? And we're like, "Oh Jesus!" Now Bennett's finishing up, and we got to try to get them out to get Tony off the stage. But man, but it was just one of those nights that we would just sit back and laugh. You know what I mean? It was classic. It was one of the classic stories. But Tony Bennett, I can tell you, I've seen him about 6 or 7 times there, and always delivers the goods, always. And
Wow.
I hear he's a little sick now, a little Alzheimer's, but we're losing everybody that used to play there. You
I
know,
know.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
BB King was there for every year I worked there, and I'm a big fan
mm,
of BB's. And what was cool about BB King is that we would bring people in from the wall, you know, the fans, in groups of 10 to meet him backstage, and he'd stay until he shook every hand and told every story. And my job was to stand behind BB because I'd have to move the people along. Because if he got involved in a conversation, I'd have to say, "Excuse me, we got other people waiting. Could you leave now? We got, you know," because BB would spend all night, you know, and his
yeah.
crew was like, "Can you move the people along?" You know, but just, you know, and Willie Nelson was another guy. Willie Nelson would come out to his bus and he would sign for like 3 hours
Wow.
out by his, and my job was to stand behind him with the light, and so he can read everything. And we actually walked him to a guy's motorcycle so he could sign the saddlebags. I mean, it's the type of guy he was, you know. But the funny thing about Willie's crew, again, we not only do we get to know the performers a little bit, but you get to know the crews very well. And Willie's crew came to us one night. I think it was Pootie, one of his road guys, and he goes, "You guys got hot sauce?" We're like, "Yeah." So we went to the kitchen. We got him some Tabasco. He goes, "Come on, we put this on our eggs. This ain't hot sauce." He goes, "Hang on, we'll show you." He goes to the bus and he brings out this mason jar of this stuff, and we put in just a piece of bread, and we were tearing when we tried, and they were laughing at us. Even New York guys, you don't know what hot sauce is all about. But this is, you know, like I said, Willie, they came every year. So when these acts would come every year, you got to know the crews really well, and you got to
Yeah.
know the band, and they loved the venue. That there were bands that just loved to play there. And you know, let's get to the comedy for a second. Again, Rodney,
Oh
uh,
wow.
Rickles, and I'll mention Richie Benevini. Richie Benevini, to anybody who's a comic on Long Island, you have to know who Richie is. He's known as
Like the
Godfather
Godfather, yeah, the
the
Godfather of
Godfather of
Long
Long
Island
Island
comedy,
comedy.
for
And when I
sure.
first broke into the business, you know, I mean, I first was starting to do comedy. He knew me from Westbury, and then Bill Bura, who's another good friend of mine, he is the guy he's the masters of properties at
I
Westbury.
know Bill.
He puts the water on the stools and he makes sure everything's right. And Billy's the sweetest guy in the world.
Yeah.
And Billy said, "Hey, Richie, you know, John's doing comedy." And he's like, "You know, we're doing Governors next week. Why don't you come out?" So I came to Governors and I walk into the green room and there's Joey Cola, there's Adam Farrar, and I'm freaking out. And Richie goes, "You're going to do 5 minutes." And he critiqued it. He gave me some hints and actually he was instrumental to get me some gigs, you know, and
Wow.
Richie was the best. But a great Richie story was he's very close friends with Kevin James, who of course is a Long Island legend. And Kevin would come. Kevin would play Westbury a lot, but he'd come to some of the shows, especially Darcy Novak's comedy shows that she'd do once a year. So Kevin wasn't there when the show started, and Richie told me and Jim at the backstage door, he says, "Listen, Kevin's coming. He's coming cross country. He's doing some cross country motorcycle thing." And he goes, "You might not recognize him because he's got a beard and he kind of lost a little weight." So Tanya goes, "Can we prank him and we like pretend we don't know him?" And Richie goes, "Oh, that would be great, right?" So now we're waiting outside. So he comes over on his motorcycle with his buddy, and he goes, "Hey guys, how you doing?" We're like, "Can we help you?" He goes, man, it's me, Kevin." We're like, "Excuse me?" So come on, it's me, Kevin James, right? We had him going for like about 5 or 10 minutes, and then he goes, "I'm with Richie Benevini." Richie comes running out the back, and he goes, "You haven't said you were with me since 1982." And then we all started laughing, and he did forgive us, you know. And he kind of critiqued what he called our third-rate acting. But I said, "Well, we got you, didn't we?" You know. So, but that was a good time.
Yeah.
But Richie would always open up for Kevin, and just a very gracious comic, and just very good to comedians. And I mean, anybody who's done comedy on Long Island, if you know Richie, you're better off for it.
I agree, 100%. I've only worked with him twice, but a very memorable, nice guy. And you're right. He's like the godfather of comedy on Long Island. Him and Joey
And
Cola, these guys.
everybody impersonates, like just that high voice, you know what I mean, right? So it was really funny. One time he showed up at backstage at a show, and they're like, "What is he doing back here?" And like he was just coming to visit, whatever. And he goes, "Hey, John, I just want to use the bathroom." I'm like, "All right, real fast." And then he just turns to the wall like he was gonna unzip against the wall. Like, "What are you doing?" You know what I mean? But he's a crazy guy, man. He's just a crazy guy. But I will tell this story. Every once in a while, somebody unexpected comes to the backstage door, and if it's a celebrity, you know, you got to let them in, right? I was working up front in the theater and the lobby, and JFK Jr. comes to the backstage door with his girlfriend and wife. It was soon to be his wife.
Wow.
And they come to the backstage door. What are you going to do? Turn them down? You know, I mean, so at the time the show was either Crosby and Stills or Nash and Crosby. It was two of the three. It wasn't all three. It was two of the three, right?
They all interchanged.
Yeah. So they brought JFK Jr. and the girlfriend into the main dressing room to meet them. So I'm up front, and Donnie gets on the radio and he goes, "John, I need you in the back." I'm like, "All right." So I come to the back and he goes, "Listen," he goes, "JFK Jr. is in the kitchen and I need you to keep an eye on him because I don't want anybody bothering him." I said, "Yeah, and the Pope's in the VIP room." He goes, "No, John, I'm telling you, he's in there. I got to show his girlfriend where the bathrooms are. Could you just hang out with him? I don't want anybody to bother him." I'm like, "All right." So I go in there and there's JFK Jr. in the kitchen. So I said, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "Good, good." I said, "Listen, there's a cooler there. There's sodas and waters if you want something," right? He goes, "Oh, great." So he opens it up. He goes, "Can I grab you something?" I'm like, JFK Jr. is getting me a soda. How cool is this? You know, right? So he goes, "Yeah, this looks like a pretty cool place. You know, it's a pretty cool job." And I said, "Well, it's not as cool as yours, right?" So he was laughing, right? So Donnie, who comes back, he gives me the high sign. So then I left. But it was like royalty because we actually had to wait for the house lights to go down before we sat him because the buzz got in the theater that he was there, and ushers and people were like just freaking out. JFK Jr., JFK Jr. So we had to kind of keep an eye on him all night that he wasn't bothered. But just a really nice guy, you know what I mean? Just a really, really down to earth guy. You wouldn't expect, expect him to be that way. And then there was when we have Jay Black shows, you know, Jay and the Americans,
Of course.
you know. And Jay being a Long Island guy, there'd be like a ton of backstage people and everything. And who shows up but John Gotti Jr. But very respectful, very nice guy. I actually walked him to his car and I'm looking behind me, you know what I mean? Right? But you know what? He shook my hand, he thanked me, you know? So, you know what I mean? Again, you know, it's the people you meet, but it's funny.
Surreal meeting these people.
Yeah, but what I kind of tell people, it's like, that must be great to, you know, talk to some of these celebrities. But what you learn really fast is that when you meet celebrities, you got to talk about something other than what they do, because they hear it all the time. Like, you know, what a big Allman Brothers fan and I was a Skinner fan, and I worked with all those guys, but I mean, I had to talk about the weather to Greg Allman. You know, I mean, you know how tough that is for me. I had like a million questions, but that's how they engage it. I talked skiing with Tony Danza for a half hour because he was talking about the weather. He goes, "Oh yeah, I'm going to Utah for the holidays," and he's talking about skiing in Utah, and he's just going on, and I'm like, just, you know, answering along. But that's how you can have like a conversation with them, because when you do meet and greets and you do merch tables with them and everything, you hear it the same thing. You know, "Oh, this was my favorite album. I love this song. I named my daughter after your song," you know, whatever.
Right.
And they're nice about it, but it's all the time. You know what I mean? It would be like if somebody came to you all the time and was talking to you about accounting. You know what I mean? You would kind of be like, you might answer the question, but
that
you'd be
happens
like,
all the time.
You know, yeah, but when, like George Thorogood, like I'm a pretty big George Thorogood fan, and he just loved comedy. And Billy's office was backstage, and Billy had all these, you know, pictures on the wall, and he loved Rodney. Thorogood loved Rodney. He loved Rickles. And he would love to talk comedy, and he'd go on and on. And I would love to get a question in, but I'm like, okay, I just got to keep going with the comedy here because he's hanging out with us. Because if you start talking about his music, he might answer the question and walk away. But he'd always remember us. And actually, Billy always said he just, as soon as he came in the theater, he went right to Billy's office. You know what I mean? So and this is the type of stuff. And again, it was just a great experience all around. And then everybody has favorites. Everybody has like their favorites. I mean, I always like Buddy Holly's Crickets because they would answer all my questions about Buddy. And you know what a big Buddy Holly fan I am.
Yeah.
Donahue was a big Elvis guy, and I think I might get the name wrong, but I think DC Fontana, his old drummer, used to come and play there. I might be wrong with the name, but Donahue was a big Elvis guy, so he would hang out. He'd make sure he was okay and everything. And Carl was a big Ringo guy. He's a big Beatles guy. So when Ringo came, Carl would, make sure Ringo got everything he needed. So everybody, but Rickles was universally loved by everybody. I'm talking from Laura Kuntz, our manager, to like the ushers. Everybody loved Rickles, and Rickles would come at least once a year, and he'd start cracking as soon as he walked in the back door. And I mean, I went to him one time, and I said, "Hey, I was watching Kelly's Heroes, a movie he did with Eastwood," and he goes, "John, I carried Eastwood in that movie. I carried him, I tell you, And I mean, what are you gonna do, right? And he's very old school. Rickles gets your name at the beginning of the night, and he never forgets it.
Wow.
And that's really cool. That's like something I tried to take. When I did the little performing I did, you try to be nice to everybody, and Rickles is that way. And he would just go out and kill it. And some of the funniest moments was just hanging out with him and just hearing him crack, like crack jokes. Like we were in, and when you're at the curtain, like where the performer comes out, Tony Danza opened for him one night, and Rickles would come to the shoot, and he'd go, "Hey, John," and the crowd couldn't see him, and I'd stick my head in the curtain. He goes, "Did he say anything about me? Did he say anything about me?" I said, "Yeah, Don," and I always called him Mr. Rickles. "Call me Don." I go, "I can't." You're Mr. Rickles. He goes, "Well, he said he used to see you here when he was 8. He goes, when I was 8. So when he was on stage, he goes, "How about that Tony Danza? Said he saw me here when he was 8. Come on." Right? So you would you'd listen. If he said anything about him, you'd just say, "Hey, he mentioned this, he mentioned that," and Rickles would always put it in the act,
Oh, that's great.
And then we're backstage in the shoot with him, and his opening act, he has that band that plays when he comes on stage. They play the Irish song, the Italian.
Don't they do the Lonely Bull? The Lonely Bull, the Herb Alpert.
Whatever. So we're in the shoot. We're in the shoot, and the opening act goes to, "Oh, Don, you have your own orchestra?" He goes, "Of course I do. What do you think this is? Stewie Stone at the Friars, 2 Jews go into a bar?" So this is just right off the cuff, and we just start laughing. I mean, this is the stuff that we did. You know what I mean? It's just, and every night was different with the stuff. And it was pretty cool. And
wow.
I'll just keep rolling with the stories if you don't mind. I mean,
I'm a big. I know the Kinks played there. I'm a big Kinks fan,
Yes.
and you had mentioned to me that the brothers really did hate each other.
What happened with the Kinks was that Dave Davies and Ray Davies, they actually had their own separate buses and their own separate road managers, and they came in separately. And the only time they were together when they were on the stage. It blew my mind. They're brothers. I mean, you think, because most of the bands come in one bus, they most, whatever. But I mean, the show was great. Don't get me wrong. But again, Dave Davies and Ray Davies rarely said a word. Maybe on stage they did, but
no, they didn't like each other on stage either. I've seen them a number of times. That's weird.
It was strange. But we'd get these one. We had ELP one night. We had, sometimes, but they didn't have the whole stage show. They kind of scaled it down a little bit. So you forget some of these shows, that we had, because we had so many of them back in the day.
Now, did you get to watch the shows? Did you actually sit down and watch the shows, or you had to stay?
It depends. Okay, it depends on where I was. If I was up when I first start, they put you up at the front door, so you don't really get to see much of the show. But as you work there and you work your way up, your next job might be the curtain, where you'd have to be where the people come in and out. And the cool job for me, and they always, Carl would always put me on the stage, which you'd walk down that main aisle, right? And as soon as the performers are on the stage, there'd be a security guard that'd sit in the stool on that main aisle about 10 feet from the stage, watching the show, because we would line the stage with other security guards. So my job was to keep an eye on the other security guards. And if they had a problem, they would call me, and then I'd say, "Oh, so-and-so to the one to the right is having a problem. There's a fan in his face or whatever. Some guy's trying to get on, whatever." So they would take care of the problem. But the thing is, you can watch the show and you can enjoy it, but you really can't enjoy it as much as you'd like. And
right, because you're working.
Yeah, and Carl would put me down there for Willie Nelson, or my favorites, B.B. King, and Leonard Skinner recently, because Skinner played there every year, I think like 4 or 5 years in a row. And what was funny about that was that I'm on the stool, And of course, I'm singing along and I'm tapping my feet, you know, to myself, and they can see that I'm having a good time. I mean, they can see, you know, that I'm restraining myself. And Ricky Medlock, their guitar player, they rip in to Call Me the Breeze, right? And Ricky walks up to me. He sits in my lap during and I'm sitting there and I'm trying not to have a shit-eating grin on my face, right? I'm like in my glory. And then, you know, and then after the show, I turned to her, I goes, did anybody ever take a picture of that? Come on, you know? And backstage, he said to me, he said, you know what? He said, if I didn't know you weren't enjoying the show, I wouldn't have done it. But I could tell you wouldn't have had a problem with it. I said, no, you can sit in my lap anytime, Ricky. It was phenomenal, you know? But getting to that stool story, I'll tell you a Beach Boy story with that. That's become a bit of a legend down at Westbury. Now, again, Westbury, when I started, was a real mom and pop place. You know, it was everybody cared for everybody and everybody else. And we all got a lot of family members working there. Two of my daughters were ushers. Everybody had some type of contacts. There were brothers who worked in security. And so the Beach Boys would come every year. Now, again, as I told you in the beginning, we all pretty much, you know, good friends, and we all pretty much love movies and TV. And if you remember, there's a scene in American, you know American Graffiti very well, don't you?
Yeah.
There's a scene where John Milner is riding with Mackenzie Phillips, and they're riding along, and Surfing Safari, the Beach Boys come on. And John Milner turns off the radio and goes, I can't stand this surfing shit. Rock and roll's been going downhill ever since Buddy Holly died, right? Mm. So now I'm on the stool and I'm about 10 feet away from the Beach Boys. They always run into Surfing Safari about the fourth song. So they go into Surfing Safari. Carl, my boss, he was a big guy. Carl's a big guy. He's about 6'1", really built, really put together. He's sneaking down the aisle behind me. He kneels right in my ear and goes, I can't stand this surfing shit. Rock and roll's been going downhill ever since Buddy Holly died. So now I'm trying not to laugh out loud. I'm putting my head down, you know, I'm like, oh, geez, right? The next year he does it again, right? Mm. So then Carl finally retires, and well, doesn't retire, but he moves on to the Disney Theater, right? So I think, okay, I don't have to deal with this anymore. So the third year comes, I'm sitting in my stool, they go into Surfing Safari, and the new boss, well, he worked with me in security, but he was promoted to boss, was Leon DeMarco. And Leon comes down, and he's reading from an index card, I can't stand this surfing, a rocket. And I'm like, get out of here. If you can't get the quote right, get the hell out of here, right? So we're all laughing. And they would send different guys down every show. And it just became a thing. And then one time Carl came back and just to see the show. And I didn't know he was in the theater. And he comes behind me, and I'm laughing the whole time. And it just became such a thing. But the last time the Beach Boys played there, I'm on the stool. I'm like, okay, I see Leon across the theater. It won't be him. I see Wizard, another good friend of mine, over there. I'm like, I'm safe. I don't think anybody's going to bother me tonight. Come on, baby, Surfing Safari. My daughter comes behind me, Carrie. Dad, I can't stand this surfing shit. Rock and roll has been going downhill ever since Buddy Holly died. And I turn and I go, you turned my own daughter against me? What's with you guys, you know? And then I just lost it. I just started laughing. And then after the show, Mike Love came. He goes, what was it? We noticed every time they're on Surfing Safari, when we had to tell them the whole story, they were cracking up. They thought it was great.
That's funny that he knew that was happening.
Well, because it was every song. Every time Surfing Safari, somebody would whisper in my ear and I'd start laughing, you know what I mean? So it became a thing after a while, you know?
Now, did you see them when Brian Wilson reunited with them?
No, you know, we've had Brian Wilson by himself.
Right, I saw that show.
But never with the Beach Boys. No, it was just basically Brian Johnson and Mike Love with the two.
Bruce Johnson.
Bruce Johnson replaced Al
Jardine, I think.
Yeah, and so those are like the two mainstay. But then they have these young guys that can really they can hit the high notes and stuff. The Beach Boys is still a very good show. You know, it's still, you know, it's still.
Well, the Brian Wilson show was really good. He had a band with him called the Wondermints, and they were hitting all the good notes. And because Brian is really
he's a little out of it backstage. You know, you get that once in a while. Another guy that gave it all on the stage was Red Buttons. Now, Red Buttons was. Red Buttons, of course, we all love him from Poseidon Adventure, Longest Day, a lot of movies and stuff, and he plays Westbury. And I got a chance to talk to him a little bit, and I said, because we share the same birthday, February 5th. And he goes, well, and he's looking at me. I go, well, of course, not the same year, you know, but he told a great story. And because I was telling him what a big James Cagney fan I was, because he does a little bit about James Cagney on the stage, and he told the story. He said when he first met, when you have to meet somebody in Hollywood, you have another actor introduce you, and so they don't know you're a fan or whatever. I guess that's the way they do it in Hollywood. Another actor that knows the actor you want to meet introduces you. So Red gets introduced to James Cagney. So Cagney starts talking to Red Buttons in Yiddish. So Red goes, well, Mr. Cagney, how did you know I was Jewish? Cagney goes, no self-respecting Irishman would call himself Red Buttons. but just that was another fun night just to be able to hang out with him, and you get. And do you know the jazz singer Linda Eater? You know who she is?
Yes.
Okay, Linda Eater played Westbury like once a year, and again we got to know her very well, right?
Yeah.
So the show was going on, and Leon, our boss, was his mom was at the show, and her favorite song by Linda Eater was a song called Vienna, right? And the whole show she didn't play the song. So now, as you know, they come off for the encore, and they're in the shoot for a while. They get something to drink, and they come back, right? So Donahue and I are walking her back to the stage. Jim Donahue goes, Miss Eater, I'll give you $1 if you play Vienna. She gets on stage, right? And she goes, I just got offered $1 to sing Vienna, and I'm going to do it. And she sang the song, and she comes back to Jim, where's my $1? we laughed about that one for a while, but I said to Jim later, I go, yeah, but the song she was supposed to sing, that was somebody else's favorite song. Jim goes, well, we're not going to worry about that.
Yeah. That's
but not all the stories end out well.
Yeah, tell me a bad one. Tell me a bad one if you're allowed.
David Cassidy.
Oh boy.
I don't like to speak ill of the dead, but he really wasn't that nice a guy, to tell you the truth. I don't want to really, but here's the story. It was weird because when he first came, at the backstage wall, there was like easily, I want to say like 100 or so women in their 40s and 50s singing I Woke Up in Love This Morning. It was crazy. I mean, he still had that. They become 15 years old again. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. So as I told you, as they walk down the aisle, we have to kind of line up, and we have to really protect them. And he got on the stage, no problem. But when he was coming off for the intermission, he did something really stupid. He's a little guy. We could have easily protected him, but he kind of held his guitar up kind of high as he was walking. So people were reaching over our shoulders and grabbing at the guitar. So finally we had a kind of football surround him and got him through. We got him through the shoot, and we got him backstage. And he turns, and it's just me and Carl. He turns to me and Carl and he goes, what the hell was that? He screams at us, right? So the road manager knew right away that it wasn't our fault, and the road manager's like, David, he gets him in the dressing room. I couldn't resist. I turned to Carl and go, hey, I just got yelled at by Keith Partridge. and Carl starts cracking up, It was just like, but it was an interesting show. But it was just weird how these women in their 40s and 50s just become like 15 again.
Well, and I would imagine Tom Jones probably,
Yeah, Tom Jones puts on a great show, though, too.
Yeah.
The Monkees, too, brought, when they first came back to Westbury, that was another one which was crazy. You know what I mean? It was just...
now, did they get along? Because I always heard rumors that they didn't get along.
From what you would see, they all came differently. I remember that. Mickey came in the bus. And
this was all four of them? Was this when Davey was alive?
No, Mike came. It was weird. Mike came.
That's right. Mike and Davey weren't.
Yeah, I kind of they denied it, but it was weird when Davey was alive. You didn't see Mike, but when Davey passed away, Mike came back for a tour, which was. And I'm telling you, as far as the Monkees go, I love the Mike songs the best. I mean, the Mike songs are like some of the best ones, like the country ones. But they came separately, and I remember Mickey was getting something out of the bus, and somebody said, "Hey, Mickey, where's Davey?" And the standard answer he'd give, he goes, "It's not my day to watch him," So they all came separately, and I didn't notice any tension or any problem, but who knows? You know what I mean? Again, they're all professionals. They get on the stage, everything's fine. But you know what? And it's funny because you and I talked about this because you luckily opened up for Mickey
I did.
at my father's place.
Yeah.
And I had to ask you, did he tell the Jimi Hendrix story? Because he always says that. He always goes, yeah. Somebody just asked me backstage about Jimi Hendrix. Said, didn't Jimi Hendrix open for the Monkees? But he said it like it just
Oh,
happened.
he did. He did tell
And
that story. He did tell that story.
but he always says like it happened 2 minutes ago. Like I was just backstage and somebody
Yeah,
said,
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
Jimi
yeah.
Hendrix open for the Monkees? But I'm like, yeah, well, I guess somebody asked you that question every night when you showed up at the show. But
He told that story, and he told the story about the Beatles when he was at Abbey Road Studios while they were recording.
yeah, well, that's how he came up with Randy Scout's Kid. I think that's how
Yep,
he came
that's
up with that.
exactly right.
That's and then he did that interview where he talked about where he actually gave the lie that like Charles Manson tried out for the Monkees or something,
Yes,
and like they bought it, and they ran with it and all this,
that's right. He told that story too. So I guess it's the same old stuff.
Yeah,
Funny.
yeah, well, because he's been doing it. He's been doing it for so long,
Well, he
and
was
it's
really
just
good. I was really impressed at how good he was because he did all the old hits. He did Beatles
and he
songs. And
sounds really good. He
he
puts on a
sounds
great show.
great. He sounds
Yeah,
great. I
yeah.
was really impressed, and it was fun. I was
Was his
talking to
sister with
someone.
him? His sister usually plays with him.
Yeah, his
Mickey.
sister was there.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
was in the
yeah,
band,
yeah,
and the band members that were there, I got to talk to them more than I got to talk to Mickey.
yeah,
And they were telling me that they've been touring with the Monkees in all forms. when
yeah. I know the
it
guy
was
you're
just
talking
Mike
about.
and
Yeah,
yeah,
the
and
guy who does the impressions.
yeah,
There's a,
yeah, he was
yeah,
good.
yeah,
And
yeah. He does an Archie Bunker impression. I remember he used to do it every show. Davey would have him do
oh,
it.
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear
Yeah.
that. But they were telling me about how Davey was bullied by he had this big Spanish woman that was, I don't know if it was his wife or his girlfriend, and she used to like beat him up. It's like this weird story.
I never
Yeah.
saw anything like that. I
Yeah,
never
no,
saw anything like that.
not on stage. This was at his house, but yeah, and they said that there was some tension between the band, and they were saying Mike is getting older and he's kind of losing it a little bit.
Yeah.
So and Peter just died, Davey's gone, so I
Well, you
think
know what?
they're
I know guys that are in bands. Like a guy I work with at the water company, and you get together and there's chemistry on stage, but it might not carry on. And when you got to see them all the time and you got to work together with them all the
mm,
time. I mean, you and me as comics, we just it's different people every night almost. So it's not we
right,
don't really get into that thing. And if you and I doing clean comedy, I mean, we get along. It's not a problem.
right.
But that with bands and stuff, that's how problems start. And
Yeah,
it's
there's
just
always egos and who
yeah,
knows, different contracts, different agents. It's
yeah.
money.
Who's
It's
got a
money.
bigger
It's
dressing
usually
room?
money
Who's
and
got a
women. Money and women are the two things that kill bands.
and Yoko Ono.
Yoko Ono. Now, I didn't want to mention her, but that's what it is. It's
Well,
either
that's the
money.
rumor. Beatle fans might argue that, but I don't know.
I don't know how true it is. But
But
now Ringo was there, but no other Beatles. No Paul McCartney or
no, no. Ringo used to play with the Ringo Traveling All Stars, and I remember
right.
the guy from Men at Work, Todd Rundgren, played with him. But one night, I think there was this was a night I'll always remember. I can't remember. I think it was like a Beatles tribute show. They brought on these heavy hitters to play, and the opening part of the show, they played their hits, and then they all did Beatles in the second half. And John Entwistle was in the show. And
Really?
Stevie, I'm 10 feet away, and they did to see him to do the dum 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 from the My Generation. It's like blew my
Wow.
head. I can't believe how close I was to see him actually do that famous bass. Like that
Yeah.
was a thrill. That was a thrill.
Wow.
See that,
Wow.
And I'm trying to think of a couple more I could tell you. I mean, unless you got some other questions for me, because like I said, I can't. I mean,
I was anxious to talk to you because I know you love to tell stories, and you've got so many.
yeah.
It's amazing that you had that opportunity to work there.
Well,
Um,
you know what? Again, like I said, it was a combination of seeing some great shows, but I think the people I worked with was the best. I
mm,
mean, Donahue and Carl and Wizard and Billy and Ed Valenson. I mean, these guys, I mean, like I said, we saw them all the time. We spent so much time together because, like I said, and we had like the stage crew was all stagehands union. So they were all real professional. Tom Fagan, who was our longtime lighting director, I used to kid Tom. I said, he's been here so long. He used to light the lights with candles, and Tom recently passed away. We lost Tom,
oh,
and Charlie Trantham on sound, and the same guys all the time. So Westbury always delivered the goods,
mm.
and I mean, always the shows were always outstanding. And it went through a lot of changes, and they tried to upgrade it and everything. But like I said, if it goes away, I'll be pretty upset to tell you the truth, because
Well, it's
again,
like such a legendary venue, and like you said, to me, that's the golden ticket. When I got to
yeah,
play there, I felt like I arrived,
Yeah,
and
even when we did the lounge show,
oh,
it was like just being there, and we went
yeah,
backstage. I showed you all the
it's
dressing rooms and everything.
it's a magical place. And
And what's cool too, what nobody really knows, if you go in the kitchen, right? And I can't remember who the first one was. It might have been Diana Ross or something. Somebody signed the kitchen wall, and then everybody would sign. Everybody, but they would add things like Kenny Rogers put like know when to fold them, and he drew a couple of deck of cards and he signed his name, and like BB King wrote. I mean, everybody would like sign their name, or they would write something, like a little. This is great to be here. I love this place, and Steve Lawrence, and I mean, just would that was another show that came a lot. Steve and Edie, and
yeah, they were popular. They'd come
yeah,
like once every 3 or 4 months, right?
and they'd play like a week, and
Yeah.
then when Edie passed away, though, Steve still sounded great. You know what I mean? There were some guys that kind of lost it a little bit, like Wayne Newton. I mean, he kind of lost it vocally, but he could still play all, like towards the end of his set, he would play all the instruments. He'd play the fiddle, he'd play the guitar. I mean, he was a real entertainer, I mean, like a guy. And it was funny because, again, I had seen his show a few times, and I was on my little stool in the main aisle, and he told the same joke that he told all the time. So the crowd's laughing, but I'm not laughing because I've heard the joke. And he's looking at me, and he goes, and he's staring at me, and he goes, that's a pretty big guy over there, right? He just kept talking, and I'm trying not to be part of the show, but Tom, the lighting guy who I just mentioned, said, John, if you mention your name one more time, I was going to turn on the walk-in light so everybody could see who you were, but sometimes like a lot of the guys, like I said, Tony Bennett never lost it, BB King still. BB King was just getting older, but again, some of these guys have earned the right to just get up there and do their laundry list, as far as I'm concerned, and because they've earned that right. Like I remember one night Willie Nelson came, and the opening act, something happened to the opening act, and he extended his set. He must have went 2.5 hours or something,
Wow.
and I'm a big fan, and I couldn't think of a song he didn't do. You know what I mean? But that's the real pros, that's that can go out there and just do it. Okay, this is what I have to do. We're going to do it, So, but
I've seen so many great acts. I saw Weird Al, believe it or not. I saw
yeah,
Weird
you
Al
know
there.
what? What's cool about Weird Al? He signs all night long for people.
Does he really? That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. They're weird fans, though. I will say that Weird Al does have like some strange, mostly kids and stuff, but
Yeah,
they all
yeah,
get
yeah.
into it.
Well, I went
You
there
know,
because my daughter was a fan, but I was impressed with his show. His show was great.
Yeah, yeah, and they do bass solo, and it's like boom, boom. That's it. Like what I mean. He used to play there every year or so, and he's a nice guy and all this. And then, like I said, you'd have people show up at the back door. One night, Jerry Orbach just showed up at a particular show, and it was funny because Carl's a big fan of many things, and I guess Carl got tipped off or something because Carl said to me, "Listen, because I'm on the back door," he goes, "When Mr. Orbach leaves, can you get him to sign my Little Mermaid and my Dirty Dancing thing, right?" So he's walking out. I said, Mr. Orbach, can you sign these? He goes, did I tell you I was coming? I said, no. No. I said, we got a warehouse in the back where we keep all this stuff. I said, yeah, that's kind of what I told him. But some of the fans were like, they would wait at the wall. We had a guide there. We called him Man of 1,000 Albums. He had all these albums. He was there, like just getting stuff signed and everything. And you got to know some of the big time fans that would come to get stuff signed and stuff. And then there were a couple of initiations. I'll tell you one initiation. We had Gallagher there. Gallagher used to come a lot.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about cleaning up, you know what I mean? Jesus.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And if you notice, everybody in the front row wore the rain slickers and everything, right? But Carl's initiation for the new guys, he didn't do it to me for some reason, because Carl found out early on I was a big wrestling fan, and Carl's a big, I was in wrestling for 20 years, 15 years, and Carl would bring me to the back just to talk wrestling. So he didn't put me through this little initiation. But what he would do, he would tell his mark, he would tell his guy, okay, bring a change of clothes. And he wouldn't tell him why. He said, you got to bring a change of clothes. And he'd put him right by the stage. And the guy would be just covered with mayonnaise and ketchup. And we'd all be taking odds on how long it would take for the guy to finally say, I've had enough. You know what I mean? Please get me out of here, right? And because we had showers back there. So it was never, a problem. But we'd all just sit there and laugh as this poor guy is getting covered with stuff. And, he's not, and it's like, okay, that's going to do it. He's coming off now, And the other initiation was the Peter, Paul, and Mary initiation, because they came every year. But I'm not a big fan, especially politically, of them. So what he would do is, like, right backstage, right before you'd walk through the chute and out to the theater, Carl would put his mark right by there, because right before they went on stage, it'd have like this circle of unity and they'd want everybody's energy, right? So they would circle around the person and they would say, whatever they did, I don't know. So Carl decides to get me, right? He says, John, I need you to wait by the, I go, what am I waiting by? He goes, just wait there, right? So, but they never asked him. I guess they saw the scowl on my face, and they never asked my energy. So actually, I won that little battle, But the last show I worked was well, again, like I said, it stopped being mom and pop, and then we were bought out by. Then Clear Channel took over for a while, and then once Live Nation came in, I think the people running it, and I'm going to be really nice about this, kind of ran it like any other theater, and I don't think you could. There was something very special about that theater. We knew what we were doing, and you don't want to change stuff that we know what we're doing.
Right.
And I think the straw that broke the camel back, and I think I just told you what a great Allman Brothers fan I was. I was on the back door, and we started having to wand anybody coming in the back door. And that includes performers. My last show there, I had a wand JMO of the Allman Brothers. He's a 72-year-old man, and I felt so bad. I had a wand, like he's like, JMO's not going to bring a gun into what? What are you kidding me, And I apologized. I felt so bad. I apologized to him, and he's like, "No, man, you're doing your job. Don't worry about it." And I said to Leon, I said, I can't do this anymore. I mean, and you all right?
Yeah, I just went to scratch my face and hit the computer.
I can't do this anymore. I said, but my job changed at the water company. I became a shift worker. I had to leave anyway, but it stopped being fun. You know what I mean? It stopped being that.
So what was the last show you were at?
Les Braves, the Allman Brother kind of with Butch, and I think that was the last show I worked. But I've been at some other ones. Kenny Rogers was another guy that we got to know his crew really well. Kenny in the beginning would play like a week, and then he'd come back in December and do like a week of the Christmas shows back in 94, 95. But towards the end, he'd maybe come once in the summer and then do like one Christmas show. And we got to know his crew, Gene Roy, his road manager, and we got to know their guys really, really well. And the Kenny shows, what's funny about Kenny, he always said the same thing every the shows, and we'd all like, okay, he's going to say, we're over here, whatever he's going to say. And we kind of knew, the stuff he'd say before he would even say it. And but and that was one of the last shows I actually went down to, was a Christmas show. And I was able to see him because that was like Gambler's last deal. That was like his last tour before he kind of retired. But we were sorry to see it go, because they were good shows, and country shows were fun to work, because country shows, the trains ran on time. I mean, the meet and greets were done smooth, because country acts, it's a real business to them. So the meet and greets and and when they say they're going to be on the stage at 8:05 and get off at 9:35, that's what they're going to do. So
right.
And you like that, but some certain shows, some certain acts wouldn't listen to their times, and whatever, and you kind of have to say, hey, we got to move along here.
Well, what was it? Was it like the old rock bands that gave you the most trouble, like the Moody Blues or something?
No. It became, because I think overall, it became a business for all of them. You know what I mean? So they all pretty much. But again, you got to understand, it's a union shop. So you go past that 11 o'clock curfew, they're gonna have to pay the union. So they make sure you got to be off the stage by 11. So that helps. When you say. But what happened one night, like, there was an Irish show there, and they had Carmen O'Quinn, this band called Cherish the Ladies, and then the Clancy Brothers. And the Cherish the Ladies were only supposed to go 45 minutes, but somehow they blew past their time. And the Clancys were supposed to do an hour and 15. They actually only had to do 55 minutes because they had to get them off at 11. So that's kind of a bit of a shame, but there must have been a reason. Maybe they didn't realize the time, and who knows. But that's those are some of the things you dealt with.
Did you see any fist fights?
Oh yeah. Oh geez. Oh man, right. Oh, okay, I got one for you, right? Again, I just told you what a big fan of, the Allmans and Skinner, Southern rock in general. So Marshall Tucker's playing with 38 Special. Marshall Tucker opens the show, and 38's finishing up. Now again, since it's in the round, they took all of Marshall Tucker's equipment and they put it in the pit. But the pit's easily accessible by the crowd. They could reach over or whatever, right? So we're waiting to bring 38 out of the they're getting ready to come off the stage, and we see a guy. he grabs a mic stand, he reaches in, he starts like going like this with the mic stand, right?
Mhm.
So Donahue goes, get that guy, right? So I'm going, I got my radio, I'm going, now again, all hell's breaking loose because the show's getting ready to end. So I get down to the guy and I'm like, hey, hey, hey. And he turns and he's running away, right? So I'm running after him and we get by the sound booth. He falls, I fall on top of him, right? So now I'm on the radio and I'm calling for help. I'm like, oh, you guys. I'm like, you remember that scene from Platoon where the kid is in the jungle? He goes, they're all around me and they're talking, they're talking. I'm not going to say the word, but they're talking. It was like that. And all of a sudden, Carl and Jim, they come running around the corner and they get the guy and all of a sudden we're outside, right? So the guy goes, why'd you throw me out? And I'm like, you're holding a mic stand up like this. What the hell are you doing? But what would happen with fights, especially if people got out of hand, what would happen, like, let's say like one security guard was like, he's arguing with a guy in the VIP room, let's just say. So the guy would go, he'd go, Carl, Jim, I'm in the VIP room. And if it's not a problem, he'd say not a problem, but he would say, hey, I'm in the VIP room. So we'd all start showing up and we'd slowly start surrounding the guy a little bit. And then once he saw the numbers, he'd kind of, back up. Not that we ever really grabbed anybody and threw them out, but, that would kind of intimidate people a little bit, and Carl was smart. He always hired pretty big, ugly guys, so we pretty much, we were able to take care of business. But there was one show that was very difficult to do, though, that we but it became a mandatory show after a while, was Rat Dog, the guys from the Grateful Dead.
Oh.
And the problem with them is that there's a fire law that you got to keep the aisles clear. You can't have people standing in the aisles, but people just clog the aisles at these shows. So it's a Halloween. So add Halloween on top of this, Stevie,
boy.
right? So we're there on Halloween, and Carl's like, "Can you keep this? We got to keep these aisles clear." So I go down, and there's this guy in a skull mask, right? I'm like, "Guy, you got to clear it out." I'm being nice, "Guy, you got to clear it out." He takes his mask and he puts it on me, and I just flipped. I'm like, "You're out of here!" And I'm grabbing him and I'm trying to get him out, and his friends are trying to protect him, and all of a sudden we're like throwing the guy outside, But it was crazy, it was just, but they don't want to listen, and after a while, you're like, you got to clear the aisles.
They're probably all high and who knows what they're on.
Well, you see, back then also, I don't think on those particular shows, but early on, Westbury was treated a lot like a Broadway theater where you could go out at intermission to have a smoke, whatever. And what would happen, though, and they'd check your ticket stubs coming in, but what would happen is you'd go out to your car at intermission, you'd drink and whatever else you do, so people would get like a little bombed. But luckily, Westbury got smart after a while, and they made a special smoking section, and they wouldn't let anybody leave. Because every theater in America is, all exits are final. And but Westbury wasn't. Again, that was another thing that made the theater unique. But they had to close that down because there was one show where it was a sold out, I can't remember who it was. It was a sold out show, but all of a sudden it was like double the people in the theater. And we're like, how the hell did this happen? But somebody made some phony tickets. And when you check ticket stubs, you don't really look at them because there's so many people. Right. You just try to, hey, you got your ticket stub, that can be difficult at times. But overall, it was a great experience. And I'm lucky I worked there when I did, and like I said, I was able to get my kids, my daughters just loved working there as they were ushers. And, like I said, it was a big family. And then when I first started, not only was Westbury active, but so was the Valley Forge Music Fair. That was another one over in Pennsylvania that was in the round. And there was like Music Fair Productions. There was a few of these theaters around, and they one by one started closing. And Valley Forge closed, I wish I could remember. I'd say like 98, 99, something like that, maybe 2000. I don't even know. I don't remember, but they closed. But they used to be, it was a little before my time, but there used to be softball games between Westbury and Valley Forge. I mean, that's the type of, place it was, again, it was a real family to us, when we were there, and, and we still are, we get together every once in a while. We haven't been able to because of the pandemic, but we'll get together at a steakhouse or something, the best of us, and we just tell the same old stories that I've just told. And we just sit and laugh, and it's just, but again, it's like, we had Frank Ocean one night. Jim and I were talking about this. Frank Ocean.
Wow.
Yeah. So what's funny about Frank Ocean is like, again, like we were able to get pictures and we're able to get, stuff signed. But again, it's done very professionally. If you got like an album you want signed or something, you give it to Carl and then he'll give it to the road man. Well, I'm just saying in general, he does his stand up and he does impressions and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But like, let's say like Skinner would come and have an album, and Carl would bring it to the road manager, and the band would sign it at their, and we always have to put a name to it, to John, to because they'd know we weren't going to sell it. That's
Right.
kind of how we would do it. So uh, so and we could get pictures, but again, it would be done when they wanted us to do. We used to have to do at the end of the night, whatever. Can we get some pictures? And they'd be like, okay. But if they didn't, we respected them. Like there were a couple acts that like, no, we were like, okay, fine. So Gorson's playing there one night. So now again, you walk out the back door. There used to be a wall there, but now we had people back even further. But at the wall, people used to stand and wait for autographs. So Carl goes to me, John, just go out by the wall and make sure everything's cool before we, walk out Mr. Gorson. But this is early on. This is in the early 90s, like 96 or whatever it was. So I go to the wall. There's nobody out there, right? Now, when Frank Gorshin takes a picture with you, he always makes a face like, ooh, he's kind of a funny guy. He's just a weird guy, right? So Carl goes, just go outside and make sure everything's cool. So there's maybe 3 people at the wall waiting for autographs, right? So I go back, I go, Carl, we're great. With no problem, right? Carl goes, great. We walk Frank out, and all of a sudden, I don't know where this guy came from. He might have jumped out of a tree. A full Riddler outfit. I'm talking tights, the mask, the cane, everything. And Gorshin turns to us and goes, "Get a load of this fucking guy." So we start laughing, we start cracking up. And Carl's like, "What about?" I go, "Carl, I don't know. He must have came out of a tree. I don't know where this guy came from, But Gorshin, get a load of this guy. Right? But I'll tell you a funny picture story. I like this one. Willie Nelson was another one. And again, I'm a big Willie fan. And again, he spent 2-3 hours signing autographs after the show. And then we got our pictures at the very end. So I had one of those old school Instrumatics back. And Ed Valenson. I'll give you another Ed story after this. Willie, you get that standard Willie smile, that Willie smile like this, right? So I got the picture with Willie, and then Ed goes, "John, can you take my picture?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So I take my Instamatic, I take the picture like this, but the flash didn't go off. So I tilt it down like this, and then the flash goes off. And Ed goes, "Great, a picture of me and Willie's nuts," right? They both start laughing, right? And I take the picture right. It's 2 guys laughing their heads off. It's like the greatest picture. So Ed goes, "I want the other picture," which is basically you see 2 waists next to each other, but you see the pigtail, so it's Willie Nelson, right? So Willie came back the next year and he was signing the pictures. We had him sign that, and he was laughing. He remembered it. So then Vince Gill comes, like I'm talking 6-7 months later. And we're sitting there telling stories. So then we were getting pictures with Vince Gill. And Ed goes, "Well, just don't make this like the Willie Nelson picture." And Vince Gill goes, "What happened with Willie Nelson?" So we had to tell him the whole story. And he was laughing about it too, But it's just one of those things. And then there was another time where this was one of the biggest thrills for me. Like I said, I was a huge B.B. King fan. And again, we couldn't get stuff signed or anything until after the show usually. And Ed had a knockoff Lucille, like an Epiphone, used Lucille, black Lucille. And he would sign our guitars, but usually he only signed Gibsons. Like if you had a Fender, if it was for us, he signed it, but usually he was like, because he was a Gibson player and that's all he wanted to sign. So Ed brings in the guitar and he goes, "Mr. King, can you sign it?" So he signs it. And then Ed did something that we were like, whoa. He goes, "Could you just play a little of it?" And I was like, because that's something you'd never ask, right? But PB goes, "Well, Lucille might get jealous," and he goes, doo-doo-doo. He played, and I just couldn't resist. I kneeled down. I go, "I've been downhearted, baby," and he just started laughing. He's like, hey, he's laughing, So you get those moments, But that's a moment with BB King I'll never forget.
Wow.
I actually sang with BB King. I mean, but yeah, you get those special moments.
That's a special moment. One more story, John, and then we're going to cut it out.
All right, I'm trying to think if I told all of them.
You said something about Ed?
I just told it to you. I just told
that was the
BB
Ed
King
story?
Yeah, the
that was
BB
the
King
BB
story.
King story.
Let me think. Who's a really cool guy? Frankie Avalon. Frankie Avalon. And you talk about somebody who has worked with everybody. I mean, come on, he was a kid playing trumpet on Jackie Gleason's show. I mean, this shows you this guy's been everywhere, right? So he played with the Golden Boys, the Dick Fox Golden Boys. So it was him, Fabian, and Bobby Rydell. And they each have their own fan clubs, right? So Frankie had met his guest, and he was in the kitchen. And again, no guests are allowed in the kitchen. It's just pretty much. So it ended up being me and Frankie, and he's drinking wine, and he was just starting to tell stories. And of course, I found out that he was one of the bands that replaced after the Buddy Holly plane crash. He finished out that tour. So I was asking him about that. I'm like, did you ever, what did you know about Buddy Holly? And he would, he goes, oh, he was well ahead of the time. He was anybody who even breathed the same air as Buddy Holly. I questioned Waylon Jennings, the Crickets, whatever. And Frankie goes, oh, he was so ahead of his time. You knew he was up for big stuff. And he says, that was a tough tour. We had to come in and replace that. Because I said, I got another question for you. He goes, it's not about a net, is it? I go, no, don't worry. But he told this story. He was golfing. He's from Philadelphia, but he really respected the Yankees. And he's golfing with Joe D. And being Italian, Frankie was like, come on. He was an idol of mine, Joe D. He goes, I was so nervous I couldn't talk to him the whole time. So it was DiMaggio, Berra, Frankie Avalon, and somebody else in a foursome playing golf, right?
Wow.
So he couldn't even speak to DiMaggio. He was like so freaked out. So Frankie's getting ready to golf or he's in the golf and Joe goes, Frankie, and he's like, oh, he's going to finally talk to me. He goes, could you move? You're kind of blocking my life. But just a great guy who basically like worked with everybody. But you would be really surprised how down to earth a lot of these people are.
Right.
There are a few egos you have to stroke from time to time, but most of them, they're just regular people. And if you treat them that way, you tend to really be able to go a little further with them. So
I agree. Well, listen, John, I knew you would talk a lot, which is good. I wanted to hear all the stories. It's always a pleasure talking to you, buddy. And we will get back with Clean Comedy All Stars. I know it.
Yes, I look forward to it.
We're going to do more churches, and because we did, I tell people all the time, we do actual churches, like in the church with the pews and the big guy behind us. It was like,
yeah. You, me, and Les, and then we have other guys that we've used. You know what I mean? We worked with Mike Keegan, who you had on a couple of weeks ago. Mike worked a lot of shows with us. Yeah, and it's.
We used to have Mike Parenti back when now he's in Florida.
Mike's down in Florida. Yeah, he comes up every once in a while.
Yeah,
and
good guy.
Kind of my sister Pat, from time to time, and she's still pretty much staying at Samantha's, and she's still doing very well with that.
Have you done anything since? I haven't done anything since March.
We did the Zoom show, right? You and I did the Zoom, and that's difficult. Come on, that's really difficult. I mean, really Les does it singing, but singing's a little easier than doing comedy. Because I got thrown by that show because I'd hear somebody talking about, hey, Myrtle over, and I'm like, who's talking out there? Because when you're on a stage, you got a mic, it's all you know what I mean? But on the Zoom thing, But I tell you, the Seaford Library just loves us. I mean, and they're just great people down there, and I'm sure we'll be back there without a doubt. And we did some great shows out east, some of those. Yes, and that quorum, remember that quorum story you told me? God, get through quorum, what was it? Was it quorum or something like that? Keep going. Don't stay in quorum, John.
Yeah. Where are you? I'm in quorum. Get out of quorum. Keep driving fast. Hurry up.
Yeah, and then there was a story like a week later that a guy got stabbed in quorum, and you're like, I told you, you can't stay in quorum.
And it's not really that bad. I was just playing around, but it can be dangerous.
I think anywhere on Long Island can be dangerous. But you know what? I really appreciate this time because I've never been able to really publicly tell these stories or talk about just how great and how special that place was to me and the people who work there. And again, if it goes by the way of the dodo, it'll be a real crime. But you know what? Time marches on, and you just can't. I mean, come on. You remember the time when they were talking about closing the Beacon in the 70s? Could you imagine if they had done that? I mean, that iconic, probably the greatest venue to see a show at. But Westbury, those memories live forever. And luckily, I made a lot of good friendships, guys I still see, guys I still talk to, and we kick over those stories. And man, it's just a lot of.
The only person I know is Heather because she booked me, so I liked Heather.
Yeah, Heather was there for a while. Yeah, Heather worked after Laura left because what happened was when I was there, Adam Cintron's dad ran it, then Adam ran it, and then Adam moved to the beach, and Laura moved with Adam to the beach, and then Heather was working there too. But again, but it wasn't so much those people. It was like the general managers they brought in that gave us difficulties of what we can do and everything like that. Whatever.
It became very corporate.
Yeah, and we had Brett Gardner of the Yankees come. And you got to try to treat them right, but they were cool too. We took pictures with them and everything. So, but again, like I said, the memories that lasted lifetime, and
Yeah.
great shows. I mean, phenomenal shows. And you walk out of there just shaking your head, go, wow, what did I just see that? You know what I
I
mean?
know.
But
I saw so many great shows there. I saw the B-52s. I saw the Kinks. I saw Rickles, Joan Rivers. My
yeah,
gosh, Tom Jones.
yeah.
Seen everybody there.
Tom Jones always put on a good show,
He
and
was fun.
Frankie Valley was a good show. Jay Black
He
was a
was
lot of
fun.
fun shows.
Yeah, I
You
think I
know,
saw him too.
You know what's the funny thing about Jay Black? Jay Black sings like an angel, but he talks like a truck driver, and he could have really been a stand-up guy because he's told some of the funniest stories on stage. You just cry, and half his show was comedy and half it was singing. And I'll tell you, I think he's not having a good time in Florida. The last time I heard,
Yeah,
and it's a
I
shame
heard.
because he was called the Voice of Westbury. He was called,
Mm.
the Voice, and he sold out Westbury something like I think he holds the record for the many consecutive sellouts. But I
Wow.
remember he came one time. He came the one night he didn't sell out. He came. He came the night before Thanksgiving, and I think he made a joke that all his Italian friends are home cooking, and his Jewish friends are just here, or something like that, or something. That's why he didn't get the sellout because it's the night before Thanksgiving. But again, he would have a joke or a story, and it's just again we
Yeah,
got to know them and his band very well, and just a really good guy. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Just a good guy.
Well, you had a great life, John. Well, you still do. You still do. I made it sound like you
Thank you,
died.
thank you. Yeah, you're not gonna bury me tomorrow, are you?
No, not yet. Hey, we'll be back. I'm sure we will be back.
Good night.
All right, John. Thanks for coming on. This was really
Okay.
educational.
When's it gonna be available? Because people are asking me.
Oh, tonight I'm going to probably post it by tomorrow.
Okay, cool, cool,
I'll
cool.
post it on my page. I'll post it on your page. You
Yeah.
can
I said
share
to
it.
Donahue, I said, because Donahue's got as many stories as I do, but he goes, John, I can't remember all of them. He goes, because he says, if I ever write the book, you're going to have to be my source code because I can't remember all of these. I said, yeah, I said,
Yeah,
I just, you know me, I got memory for this stuff. And
yeah.
it's just, but luckily I think I hit everything I wanted to talk about,
All right, good.
which is pretty good. Cassidy, Down Goes
Well, you
Frazier,
even
the
wrote it
JFK.
down. Look at it. It's like a set list.
Well, yeah, you know me. I mean, I can't remember shit, but I can remember the stories, but I can't remember my act. That's the problem.
Yeah. All right, Johnny
Is
boy.
Samantha bringing you back anytime soon? Did she say anything?
She asks me all the time, but I'm not ready yet. Pretty soon.
Okay, because they do kind of keep, they keep people distance and everything, and it's I was there I think in December. I think I did a show,
Oh, how
so
was it?
it was good. It was all right, and then
That's
she put it
good.
on, she tapes it too, so
Yeah.
it goes online too. So,
Yeah, I
but
know.
again, it's funny because now that we're off the air, I'll tell you, so
Oh,
many,
we're not off the air yet.
it's like the broken people, and I still think of
Oh,
that.
don't say
I
it.
call
Don't
it a
say it.
broken people.
All
All
right.
right, Stevie. All right, man.
John, this has been great.
Great. Yeah. Who are you getting on next? You gonna get Les on or something?
Yeah, I will. I'll get to everybody.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, thanks. I know I love doing this because again,
This is fun.
I've never I'm not I can't write anything down, but if I could talk about it, it could live forever then. So
Yeah,
great.
exactly.
All right.
I
Thanks,
will I
Stevie.
will post it. Thank you so much, John.
All
Good to
right,
see
brother.
you.
I'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right, Betty.
Good
Talk
night.
to you later.
Leave meeting.
All right, take care.